Okay, the recording has started, and this is the March 31st, 2020 Crossplane community meeting. We'll start as usual with our milestone checkup. And last week, we were able to release the 0.9 version of Crossplane. Here in the agenda are linked the release notes for some of the notable updates and things that we included in that release. So you can check out these the release notes there, and start using 0.9 and provide any feedback if you haven't already. Thank you, Dan, for helping to run that release again and for writing the release notes. I appreciate that work there. And we could keep an ongoing conversation about how to streamline the release process or add more automation so that it becomes less manual steps and less burden. At least it's one thing I do like about our releases right now is that they seem to be very reliable. We don't seem to run into any unexpected issues while we're releasing the software or doing builds or promoting things. They tend to run fairly stably, even if they are a bit long on the process that you have to go through. There's an issue in for provider AWS that we are planning to do a patch release for 0.7.1. That was started last night. Dan, can you give me an update on if that made it out to release yet or not?
Yeah, right now we're doing some final testing just to make sure before the release goes out, which we're trying to do a little more QA on all of our releases these days. So we're doing some final tests there, but it's going to be 2 clicks of a button to get that out. The docs and references are already updated, so you should see that landing today.
Excellent. Thank you for following up on that. And Muvafek, thank you for providing the fix for the issue as well. If I recall, it was your pull request, I think, that addressed this issue.
Yeah, it was also my bug.
Awesome. Thank you for taking care of that quickly. And it's good that we'll be able to get a patch release out to fix that issue quickly. Awesome. So then we're working, on our monthly release cadence. We are working towards our next monthly release of 0.10. Your semantic versioning does allow double digits and even triple digits for each field. So we get to 0.9 and we don't have to go to 1.0 next. We are going to continue on bumping the minor field of the version. So 0.10 will be our next release. And we tend to try to do those around the middle of the month. So I proposed a tentative schedule for feature freeze around the middle of the week and March 15th, right? Or sorry, no, that should be April. March 15th has already passed. There we go. The middle of next month, April 15th, and then release it by Friday at the end of the week there. We could adjust those accordingly, maybe not to do a release on Friday, but that's the target week there since it's the middle of the week and, stick to our schedule that we try to do. The roadmap has not yet been updated. And Phil, can you, like you have done such a great job of for the preceding releases, can you take a pass to update the roadmap for 0.10? Thank you, sir. Yeah. Very much appreciate it. I said please here, showing some manners and appreciation of your work. Awesome. So yeah, we're just getting started on 0.10. And you can add items into the milestone. That's the core Crossplane repo, 0.10 milestone. And we'll, in the hope of efficiency and expediency, we'll be releasing minor updates to all the providers and stacks as well. So, feel free to open issues and get them into the next milestones for each provider and a stack, et cetera, that we maintain. All right, so that's a milestone update there, milestone checkup. 0.9 was out last week. We'll do a AWS patch release today, and we're working towards 0.10 at the middle of April. So let's go ahead on to the community topics section. I always love starting with the TBS episodes. Dan, the OpenFast episode was awesome last week. Do you want to talk about that and give us a quick couple of highlights from it?
Sure. Yeah, so we did a show with Alex Ellis, who is the founder and maintainer of OpenFaz. which is basically serverless functions on Kubernetes and other platforms as well. But for our purposes, Kubernetes. And we showed how you can basically consume managed services from a cloud provider or from Kubernetes from your serverless functions using OpenFaaS. So that's a nice thing about standardizing on the Kubernetes API. You can pass connection information around in secrets. There's a uniform format. As Jared is bringing up here, this is a blog post that kind of details some of the things we went through in the video. So if you don't want to watch the full hour and 15 minutes, this is a quick run through. And it also has some links out to other things and a little more detailed description of the value that Crossplane is providing here. So both those are great resources if you're interested in doing serverless on Kubernetes. And they also link to kind of timestamps in the video, so you can just watch certain parts if you'd like. So it was a great show. Appreciate Alex coming on. Also wanted to touch on, which it looks like has been added to the agenda here, TBS 14. We do already have our guest for TBS 14, so you can get a little sneak preview for joining the community meeting this week. We're going to do Open Policy Agent. So this is going to be a really cool episode. There is a lot of work done for a lot of products to establish policy, especially if you're provisioning infrastructure. Once again, standardizing on the Kubernetes API allows us to use things that are also standardized on the Kubernetes API, or at least integrate with it, as Open Policy Agent does. So we're going to have Torin Sandal on, who works on Open Policy Agent and Gatekeeper, which is their Kubernetes implementation. And we're going to show things like restricting the size of a database that can be provisioned and that sort of thing, which we just get out of the box from Open Policy Agent. So that's going to be a really cool episode. Super excited for that. I think a lot of especially larger organizations will be interested in checking out that functionality. So that's definitely something to look forward to.
Right on, Dan. This is a good string of really high quality guests and collaborations. I love how we're getting other interesting projects in the ecosystem and collaborating with them and showing off, how there's interesting scenarios and value that can be fulfilled by the two projects working together. So that's fantastic, Dan. And I like it how you're able to tell us the guest for next episode already in the community meeting here. So what a treat for all of us at the meeting today. All right, cool. And I love their artwork, by the way. This makes me think that I'm about to play some little real-time strategy game. That's right. I don't know what this is saying, but it makes me happy. All right. And cute little picture with the sunflowers here, Dan, as well. I like that. Solid.
I cropped my fiance out of that, so I don't.
Awesome. All right. Cool. And then, we have, I don't know what updates specifically there are necessarily from the last time in the community meeting here, but, we're still continuing to do some controllers to support remote propagation scenarios and local deployment scenarios as well for the for OHM, Open Application Model. Dan, I think the work on the remote implementation is pretty well far along, right?
Yep, it's pretty much done. We're doing some testing with it now. We moved some of the work that was done there into core Crossplane and Crossplane runtime, which basically allows us to use that for both local and remote scenarios. So always want to share code where possible. Also, some of the code can be reused for different types of OAM workloads. So right now we're just implementing core types. But you can imagine that there may be different types of workloads that all get translated to similar objects or at least get wrapped up. So great example of this is in the remote case. We do all the translation of the OAM workloads to Kubernetes native resources like a deployment or a pod or something like that, or maybe a service. And then we wrap those up in a Kubernetes application, schedule them to a remote cluster. So we've made it pluggable so you can essentially package up your workload however you want with your reconciler, and then just pass to the shared reconciler, wrap in kube app or something like that, and it'll wrap it up for you. And so you kind of get that same functionality just with basically a one-line change in your implementation of the controller. So should be a pretty extensible model that allows us to build on top of this kind of like initial proof of concept work really quickly.
Awesome. That's great. Cool. And then I think just yesterday, Marcus, you started on packaging Crossplane to be installable via Operator Hub and in OpenShift type of scenarios. Do you want to give us a quick update on that too, Marcus?
Yeah. At the bottom of that link is a link to the Operator Hub, well, the Community Operators Operator Framework repo. And they've got a big checklist on there of steps to make sure that your Operator Hub entry is up to snuff. And so I'm sort of going through that list. At the bottom is a link to the PR on their site. Comment bottom.
Oh, comment? Oh, yeah. This one?
Yeah, that's the one. And so there's
is this part of their template for new PRs?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I thought ours had a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of testing to do in here too to actually bring it up in OpenShift, and so some things that some steps that I'll have to go through, and you see the files change there. It's like all of the Crossplane CRDs, and then 2 metadata files that are not Crossplane CRDs. And so it will be nice to automate this in the future somehow, so that for each release we don't have to handcraft this PR.
Yeah, and that'd be interesting that maybe we could sync up about like the various transformations that have to get done here, because yeah, having to do that by hand, like if there's a change in one of our CRDs, like to add a new field or whatever, do we have to do a whole bunch of steps manually, or what's that like? I would hope that they would have some upstream tooling to make this a streamlined process as well.
Yeah, one of the things that there's a lot of parallels between the kind of metadata that they're looking for here and the kind of metadata that Crossplane stacks can provide.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that neither offers that I was thinking would be useful is if Cube Builder had an annotation to say, here's an example CR of my CRD. And then our pipeline of generating docs and generating examples could be based on that. And then I would want that to make it into some other output, to make it into the CRD. And then I want an Operator Hub tool that will look at all the CRDs and generate this metadata file. So I just want a lot of turtles, and I don't have any turtles right now.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Well, great work getting that started. And that'll be really awesome to be able to, gain some traction and, make the Crossplane effort available in OpenShift and on Operator Hub. So that's awesome. Muvafik, do you want to give us an update about the composition model? I don't know if it's been captured in the PR yet, but I know that you all made some progress last week on that, you and Nick and Bassam.
Yes. So there were a few high-level things that we couldn't agree, basically, but I think we are like 95% on board with the new solution. Do you want me to go through it quickly, or?
Yeah, just if you do like a quick minute or two update on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So the main point was basically there is one path that you create a composition. There will be some selection between the compositions, and the other one was just pinning down what composition is gonna fulfill one CRD. And the consensus was well, let's just make it optional for users, because in one side, if you make it selectable and all that stuff, you've got some flexibility on different levels. But on the other side, if you just force one composition for a CRD, it is more predictable and easier to use as building block for other compositions in your packages. So what we basically agreed upon was that just expose an option for enforcing a specific composition, or just allowing the creator of the CR to choose one, or some scheduling going on. Another one was that here in this design, it's only composition kind here, but like in the future there will be like ham composition and then customized composition, other two types, so that you can actually like give your composition via templating engines as future consideration. But for now, it's only composition kind, basically.
Cool. That's awesome, Vafik. Like that's you all have been working hard on that that design, so it's great to see some more progress on it.
I think after the backup restore stuff, we will get to implementation.
Yep. So speaking of backup and restore, Dan, do you wanna just talk about this issue for a second?
Yeah, for sure. So all of these issues here are around backup and restore for a Crossplane cluster. So the idea is that you could have backups essentially of all your configuration in your Kubernetes cluster, all of your Crossplane resources. And then when they are lost and then bulk reapplied, then they would automatically essentially assume the external resources and reflect the exact state as when they were lost. So there's a couple of moving pieces there. First of all, the kind of obvious one is being able to query the cloud provider or the external provider and see if the resource already exists. So we already support that with a lot of resources, but these three issues for GCP, AWS, and Azure are making sure we have that support on all of them. So basically when the managed resource gets created in the observe, it's going to see that that managed resource already exists. And then it's going to start managing that. And then some of these other ones are related to other components of Crossplane. So the top one there, which has already been merged, is when we create a remote resource from a Kubernetes application, which gets broken into Kubernetes application resources. In the Crossplane cluster, the name, namespace, and UID of the Kubernetes application resource gets put as annotations on the remote resource in the remote cluster. And that's basically a multi-cluster way of doing owner refs, essentially, so that we don't start managing a remote resource from our Crossplane cluster. Because you can imagine if there were existing resources in the remote cluster, we don't want Crossplane to be able to create a Kubernetes application that just establishes control over those resources. But we do want, if that resource was created by Crossplane, when a Kubernetes application gets recreated, for it to be able to regain control of resources it was already controlling. So basically all we did here is that when we check for the owner, we remove the UID of the Kubernetes application resource because that would change when you restore a backup. So we just make sure the name and namespace exists. And we actually do still place the UID annotation on the remote resource, but now you won't be able to assume control of a resource that wasn't created by Crossplane, but you also will be able to assume ones if you lost the owner for a period of time. So that's what that is. And then the second one there is in regards to making sure that claims rebind to the correct managed resource when they're created and if they're in different order. So if both resources are already bound, that they actually, or I guess when they're recreated, that they bind to each other. And then the third one there, I actually don't remember what I put, but we can click on it. Looks like I tagged Muvafiq on this. So I assume, oh, it's the doc for backup and restore. So I don't know what the timetable is for that, but essentially just describing how to do backup and restore of a Crossplane cluster.
Yeah, did we have an issue for updating controllers of each one of the providers as well?
Yep.
Cool. Great. Yeah, but it's definitely going to be a bit of effort to get those scenarios supported, but it's absolutely a nice step towards reliability and stability over time as well, especially in the face of disaster recovery.
For sure.
Cool. So Dan, it looks like you and your copious spare time started up another project here that looks pretty exciting. Want to tell us about this one?
Sure. So this is a template repository, which is, I feel like, kind of an underused GitHub feature that basically allows you to create a new repository from an existing one. So you'll see this I guess, green. I don't know what color that is. I'm colorblind, but anyway, you can click that and create a new repository with this one. So this is basically the bare bones of a Crossplane provider. It doesn't rely on the Upbound build submodule, which makes building providers a lot easier, but sometimes people don't want to manage that dependency of a submodule, and they don't want to have to update and that sort of thing. And it's a little bit simpler just to kind of see these, this makefile here. So it does the basics of building your stack, packaging it, allowing you to push it to Docker Hub, and then install it into a Crossplane cluster. So this works as is. It basically just has a provider resource and then a resource called myType, which just has dummy fields in it, and the controller just prints the struct on every reconciliation loop. So it's meant to be modified to fit your use case, but it has a bunch of this stuff built in, so you can get going really quickly. I think a lot of times actually installing a stack or a provider kind of gives you a better picture of what you need to do to continue to build it out. So this is meant to get you to that installation step a lot faster. So there needs to be a live documentation to go with this, obviously. There might also be parts that we don't want to include or we do want to include, or a better way to demonstrate an example resource. But this will get someone going relatively quickly. So that's the goal here. Also in this org here, this Crossplane book org, which is basically just created so I could get a free GitHub website, is going to have some documentation just about getting started with Crossplane. So it's more of like an informal guide, so different than the docs. It starts with like learning Go, basically. And it is extremely incomplete, extremely work in progress. But if you are someone who is working on building new providers or extending Crossplane, then this is probably a good place to start. So welcome to any and all feedback on any of these different components here.
Right on. Awesome, Daniel. That's good stuff there. Let's see. Yeah, I appreciate your efforts on facilitating or advancing the experience around adding code to Crossplane, adding new extensions and writing support for it. So that's definitely useful to help adoption and the developer community as well. Okay, so that was everything in the community topics section. And so we can move on to the PRs discussion here. I just listed this PR that I was working on for release process updates. I don't think that there's much that was contentious about that or needed further discussion. I was just needing to incorporate some final feedback, I think from Dan on that. Yeah, Dan, was there like any major blocking things? Because you had asked for changes, but was there anything like, it wasn't like a massive refactoring or big fundamental changes, right?
Not at all. I think there was one that I thought actually needed a change, and the other ones were like just comments. So, and I think even the one I asked about might be non-critical anyway. So
cool. I'll incorporate your feedback. There's no problem with that at all.
Cool.
But yes, okay, good. It would be good to get that updated. Perfect. Okay. Any other pull requests that folks wanted to mention in this venue here before we move on? All right. And that is also the end of the agenda items that we had for the meeting today. So if anybody wants to bring up an agenda item that isn't on the list here, that's the floor is open. And if not, then we can go ahead and adjourn for the week. Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and adjourn. And good to see everybody here. Lots of progress going on. There's a lot of exciting things that we're talking about here, and we will see you all online.
Cool. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Yep. Happy Tuesday.